Hello and welcome to the Wine Access Unfiltered podcast. You know, over the last year, we have joined you live from some of our favorite wine events across the country. Aspen Food and Wine, Premier Napa Valley, and today we are joining you live from Oregon for Salud, the Oregon Pinot Noir wine auction. We are going to be joined, just like the other special formats of the other shows we've done, by four of the stars of the show today, vintners from wineries around Oregon, and getting you the inside scoop on things, giving you an inside peek on what they've been up to, how they even arrived at this auction to begin with, and of course, a few tips and tricks if you are visiting the region, which I absolutely recommend that you do. Now, even though we've got a special format for the show, that doesn't mean that we're not drinking a wine from the podcast Wine Club. So if you are a member, go ahead and grab this wine right here. This is Big Table Farm Rosé, and we are going to be talking to Claire Carver from Big Table Farm and drinking this wine with you guys. So get it chilled, get it in your glass, and if it's not there already, well, this is your cue to rectify that. You can find everything you need to join the Unfiltered Podcast Wine Club in the description below. I encourage you to do that. And of course, if you haven't done so already, make sure you are liking, subscribing, doing all the things to let us know that you're enjoying what we're doing here. So without any further ado, let me welcome you to our first guest of the show, Michael Fay from Domaine Serene. All right, well, first things first, we cheers. Because
that's a great way to start.
You were born in Italy, right?
I was, yeah.
So you're a California boy.
I am a California boy. I was a California boy. I am definitely an Oregonian now. Absolutely, yeah.
What makes you an Oregonian?
I was always intrigued by the Pacific Northwest. I grew up in California. I went to school in Washington, lived in Seattle, fell in love. The very first wine I ever fell in love with was Oregon Pinot Noir, Domaine Serene wine.
Way.
Yeah, in the 90s when it wasn't.
That's like pretty early days for Domaine Serene.
It was. Yeah, we were founded in 1990. I think the first wine I really had a spiritual awakening to was a 1995 Domaine Serene, and it just blew my mind. And I spent the rest of my career learning and striving to come up here. And now I live here and get to work here and experience this area is the spiritual and qualitative home of Pinot Noir for the whole U.S. Yeah. And now I get to work here and live here. It's just pretty magic. You
hear that? Santa Barbara and Sonoma. Oh, Pinot Noir.
I have some friends
in Oregon.
I have some friends at home that are not stoked on
that. Well, we have not formally introduced you, Michael. You are the winemaker here at Domaine Serene and have been now for how long?
For about eight, I just celebrated my 8th vintage. So yeah, I'm the vice president of winemaking and viticulture for the Evanstad Estates, which is Domaine Serene here in Oregon, but also Chateau de la Craie and Domaine Evanstad in Burgundy in France.
That's right. Well, how offended is Burgundy that you just called? Well, I guess you just said domestically for Pinot here, right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we can. There's no animosity between Burgundy and
there should
Oregon.
Not be. It's two very, very distinctively different places. We just happen to grow Pinot Noir and Chardonnay at the same qualitative level, but they have very different expressions from both places.
I love both, and I think it's been so interesting in the course of my career to see how that shift from everyone thinking that Oregon was this sort of answer to Burgundy to where it is now, which is that Oregon is very much its own thing in terms of producing Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. But I love that you guys do both. I love that you have these different arms sort of under the same umbrella. But I was doing some research on Domaine Serene because my first introduction to the brand was when I was in New York. I was a sommelier there. We had 2 Pinot Noirs on the list. One was another Oregon producer, and the other was Domaine Serene, which was like more luxurious of the two. But it was a great seller, and I fell in love with it immediately. Always had a great passion for it. But it is this wine that just seems to captivate people. And when I was doing my research, I saw that the owners purchased 42 acres back in 1990 before anyone was really talking about Pinot Noir in the United States. They added another 100 acres after that, continued to add more, and they've just had this enormous amount of success in a very short amount of time. So what is the secret sauce here at Domaine Serene? Because that's impressive.
Ultimately, it comes down to the leadership. It was Grace Evanstad and her husband, Ken, that were searching for the best place in the United States to grow Pinot Noir, specifically. Especially in the beginning, it was much more about Pinot Noir was the big discovery and the big kind of impetus. And they would spend most of their vacations and time together early in their marriage going to Burgundy and being inspired by those wines. And it was very aspirational to them because Burgundy is such a hard place to get into.
Right.
So they started studying where in the United States can you make, where do you have a similar climate? Because Pinot Noir specifically is very rooted to climate. It has to be in the coolest regions. When you can combine that with incredible soil like we have here in Oregon, that's what makes it special. And so it was really about finding that right place here in their home country to be able to do that. And they found that here in the Dundee Hills, which is where we're sitting right now. But a lot of what really makes the Domaine Serene, I think, very special is the fact that we own all of our own vineyards. We make all of the wine in our own winery. We're right on this top of the hill where we're sitting right now. We have control of everything. That was very important to them from the very beginning, is to be able to have the right grapes planted in the right climate, in the right soils, and then give the winemakers every opportunity to make the best wines possible. And I feel like since I've came here, I've had that luxury, and it truly is a luxury. It's something that I know is not normal. It's not, everybody doesn't get it, that I have a winery that has space for every grape that we grow here. We have that here in Oregon. We have that in Burgundy, but it started here in Oregon, and it's something that it gives you a lot of potential to make great wine, but it comes with a responsibility that you have to do it every year because things are laid out for you. Like we have some of the most incredible vineyards, including this wine that we're tasting right now, the Grace Vineyard, which we planted in 1996. It's named after our owner. And when they planted it, they had no idea that it was going to show some of the same characteristics as what the name says or the owner is, which is that graceful quality, that ethereal, kind of multi-dimensional, sophisticated wine. When you plant vines, you don't know what they're going to express. This was serendipity.
Yeah. And so these vines are how old now?
So 96. You're making me do the math right now.
I am,
Yeah, it's almost 30 years old, right?
So 30-year-old vines, which, by Burgundy standards is, right where you want to be for something that produces a wine like this. And you're right, it is interesting to smell and taste this wine because it does elicit grace, first and foremost.
Right.
It's beautiful, and I wonder, as a winemaker, you mentioned, there's great potential, but a great responsibility. Not all heroes wear capes, but how daunting a task is that for you? And what are the things that you're doing to ensure that this wine does remain graceful?
When I think about the level of responsibility, it's really more like an honor. It's this knowing of this place is so special. This, if we want to talk specifically about this vineyard or the Domaine Serene vineyards and wines that we make, it's almost impossible to explain in words. It's this feeling of respect and gratitude for the specialness of this. It's not something that we talk about terroir all the time in wine, and it's really hard to explain because it's partly soil, it's partly sunlight, it's partly elevation, it's partly just this specialness of these certain locations, and it's not easy to pinpoint, but you can taste it and you can feel it, and when you can feel it, it gives you this level of responsibility and feeling like you have to be the caretaker of it. I feel much more like a matador than anything else, is where I really try to stir everything up in the vineyard, and then you just get out of the way and let it express itself.
It's almost like you have to have so much control over the situation to allow yourself to not be in control and let the grapes and the vines and the terroir kind of do what it's going to do, which is, as you know, as a winemaker, not always the case. You're not always in control over things, but at a place like this that has all of the equipment, all of the things in place to allow you to do that, it must be a little bit easier to some degree.
It's absolutely easier. There's no doubt. I would definitely say that, working at Domaine Serene and also with our wines in Burgundy and stuff, there's an ease because the vines and the vineyards are in such great care, and the wineries have space for all of them, and we don't have to make any decisions based off of scarcity, right? But what that also does is it makes you heightened to make better decisions.
Yeah.
It really like something in your mind like clicks and says, because of these special things that are all laid out for me, I have to do an even better job.
Right, it kind of raises everything up for you, right?
Yeah.
So funny. I'm looking around right now, and I want to shift gears because on our way in, your colleague had mentioned that we're at Domaine Serene, for those of you who are watching on YouTube. We're at Domaine Serene, we're in this beautiful tasting space, and she mentioned that it was sort of modeled after a Burgundian winery. Obviously, Grace and Ken going there so much, I can understand why, but I want to talk a little bit about visiting Domaine Serene, because this place is really special. Yeah, for me too. So like one of the great things is the clubhouse where we're sitting in, we built these beautiful caves down below, which is where we're having this conversation, and it was designed after the 15th century caves that were below the chateau, which was purchased in 2015, Chateau de la Craie, with 18 vineyards, a literal chateau. It's pink, by the way, too, which is super cool. I want to see pink in here.
It's so cool.
Just throw some rosé on the walls or something.
Absolutely. So it was designed to have that kind of feel, but it's immersed here in Oregon. So it's this really cool throwback to history, the historical significance of wine caves in Burgundy, in France, all over the world, in Champagne. But it's a unique place. And the other thing that's really cool personally for me is that I was hired and started my journey here at Domaine Serene the same month that we opened the clubhouse. So as this building as these caves were being christened for the first time, I was experiencing my first time as we grew up together.
So cute.
Exactly.
That's so cute.
Yeah. And I have a special connection to it, and I think a lot of our wine club members and a lot of locals and travelers and everything have a special feeling for it as well, because it's very unique. And that's one of the things that's so awesome about Oregon, is that you can be your true authentic self, and it's acceptable. You can have a place that's as beautiful and luxurious as the clubhouse and the caves that we're sitting in, and you can have a tasting room that's a blacksmith shop, and that's equally cool and historical and awesome. I, coming from the East Coast, was reminded immediately, basically upon landing in Portland, how nice people are here and just how friendly. I walked into a coffee shop this morning, and it was 7 a.m., it was bright and early, and sometimes when you do that in other places, they're not the friendliest when you walked in. But as soon as I walked in, the guy was like, "Hey, where are you? What are you in here for?" Couldn't have been nicer. And I just feel that spirit of community is just everywhere here. And it's just so refreshing, because especially when you have, I think, a connection to some places like Burgundy, which don't always have that reputation, it's nice to come and feel this Burgundian sensibility around you architecturally, but then have the warmth of the people and the community here. This is the best wine community I've ever worked in, for sure. When I moved here, I could sense it. I could feel it. People were open. Man, you're just trying to piss off California, aren't you? No, I love California. I absolutely do. And I got my career started. I loved every minute that I was down here. But there's something different here, and one of the things that we're celebrating this weekend that's really different is the Salud wine auction, which is 50 wineries from around the valley creating a special cuvee to donate and raise money for vineyard workers, free health care. That is something that feels very authentically Oregon. The nature, the camaraderie, the togetherness, the power of the people here is really, really important. You can feel that. You can feel that in every space here, in the vineyards here, in all the tasting rooms, in the clubhouse here. It really is. It is a very open and spiritual kind of place. I do think that you might consider adding a tasting space that's called church here, because I do feel like when you tell people you're going to wine tasting, you're like, well, I'm going to church. Have a little grace. Oh my goodness, I didn't even get that. I didn't put two and two together right there. If you're having a spiritual experience, you might as well make it something you can tell people when to church about. That's right. Living here in Oregon and obviously spending a lot of time at Domaine Serene,
what are some of the other things that you like to do or you tell people who are visiting to do? Any like tips for around the region?
Yeah, so one of the things that's really amazing about this wine community is Oregon's a very outdoorsy place, right?
Yes.
Like people are very keyed into.
I have noticed.
We have mountain ranges like on both sides of the valley.
Yes.
A lot of people are really into hiking, biking, outdoor things. Those are things that we're trying to provide here too as a winery, is that we know that people are really into the wine, but they're also into experiences. And so being able to take a glass of wine and walking through the preserved oak grove that we have on the property,
that's cool.
or through all these open spaces that people maintain. Like in Oregon, like we don't plant every acre, and Domaine Serene doesn't plant every acre that's available for planting grapes. We keep oak savannas and riparian zones and all these things so that people can experience the outdoors and everything else that people come here. I think that's really true to a lot of places here, is that the wine, it's very wine centric, but how you rotate and navigate around the wine industry is through all these outdoor experiences and being able to take people to the place so that they can get the sense of place.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And you're right. Even just driving around here, if you haven't been to this region before, you can't drive 15 yards without seeing like a forest of trees. Like it's not like going to other regions where it's just like you see vineyards for miles and miles. Like it really is forestry here, and it really lends to this sort of outdoor lifestyle. In fact, the very first time I came here, I was with a winemaker and we were supposed to go see vineyards, and he was like, do you want to go see vineyards or do you want to go mushroom foraging? And he took us mushroom foraging.
Oh, that's
it was awesome.
Cool.
I had so much fun. It's something I never would have done, but it really, it felt very natural here.
I hope they cracked some good Pinot Noir with those mushrooms.
Oh, we totally did.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, we had sparkling, we had Pinot, we got some great chanterelles. It was like best day ever, but it was truly Oregonian, like for me. And I love that about this place so much. And every time I come back, I'm just reminded of like, the culture here is just so unique. The wines are so unique. And I think what Domaine Serene has built really sort of encapsulates that. And I imagine as a winemaker and also a resident here, like that's just so nice and lovely to be around. Yeah,
it's really an amazing. There's also some things about this area that are really unique, I think, in the world, is the fact that you can go to wine country and be surrounded by all this ethereal beauty, both the forest, the vineyards, and all of this. But we're also only 45 minutes from a world-class city of Portland, right? Which has incredible live music, arts, theater, dance, all of those things. The food is absolutely incredible. It's one of these places that's it's really unique that you can have all of those things so close and have such a community that kind of involves all of that.
Yeah, you guys still have a tasting room in Portland as well.
Yeah, we do, in the Pearl District. Like in the heart of downtown Portland. Like it's a very kind of immersive, somm-led kind of tasting experience where we open up a lot of the older vintage wines. What's really cool about all of our different locations that we have for Serene is they all have like some sort of essence of their location. So Portland is very hip and cool, and you have a lot of like sommeliers and people from restaurants and things. So we curate the wines very differently there. So we have older Burgundy wines, older Domaine Serene wines, which are not really as available to a lot of different locations. Here at the clubhouse is much more about being able to share the breadth of our portfolio of Evenstad estates. So being able to have the wines from Burgundy, the wines from Domaine Serene, and all of that. But we try to make sure that those different locations, whether it's in Bend or Lake Oswego or Portland in the Pearl, all have their own personality, and they have wines that are curated specifically for the clientele or the people that are going to come into it. And that I think they all have their own vibe.
Yeah, which is important here. They should have their own vibe.
Yeah, they should.
You reminded me when you were talking about the back vintages. Have you gone back and tasted the 95?
I've tasted virtually every vintage, not every single wine of every vintage, but I've tasted all the way back to the 1990, which is the very first vintage for Domaine Serene. And I've had the 1997 Côte Sud Chardonnay, which was the very first Chardonnay that we ever made, that's still like singing. Like if I can make that wine, taste that good in the years going forward, I will be absolutely stoked. But yeah, the wines are very age-worthy. That's another thing that's really amazing about Domaine Serene, about Oregon in general. And I think that also has that kind of parallel with Burgundy, is that Burgundy is known for making wines that can last a very long time.
Yeah.
And we can do it here because we have similar. I wouldn't say the style is the same, but the quality level is the same, and the ageability is the same, and that's what's really important, I think.
Yeah, Oregon's super ageable. When I was a sommelier, we used to sneak in a few older like DDOs from the 80s, and those wines were rocking. They were so good.
They're probably still rocking.
Yeah, they were awesome.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's back here, but if you want to crack open a bottle, let me know.
Oh, I'm sure we can find something for you.
Always happy to have some older Pinot, especially when it's made like this. For those who are thinking about visiting, I know you guys have like a little thing for our audience.
Yeah, we have some promotions, some special wines that we can offer to people. They can reach out to us on our website is probably the best way to reach out to us. The wine that we're trying right now is typically a wine club only wine, but we're going to let anybody have it that would like to have it. We're going to unlock it.
I'll direct people to your Instagram for that, and you can always check the description for more information on Domaine Serene. Michael, I know you've got a very busy weekend ahead of you because it is Salud, and there's bidding, and there's money to be raised, and there's probably some wine to be had. What are you most excited to drink over the next 2 days?
Well, the most exciting thing to drink is definitely going to be the Grace Vineyard, and we're going to be drinking it from multiple different vintages this weekend, because one of the best things that we're celebrating this week is Grace Evenstad, our founder, is going to be honored with the Salud Legacy Winemaker Award tomorrow evening.
Awesome.
So as a toast to that, we will be drinking Grace all weekend long.
I love that. Well, let's toast to Grace and toast to all the good you guys are doing here. It's been a pleasure to get to know you a little bit, and I look forward to sharing some old wine with you soon.
All right.
Cheers. Hey there, I hope you guys are loving the show so far. I just want to take a brief break, and if you're watching this, take you on a little tour of Domaine Serene. This is a beautiful property, and if you are listening to this and not watching it, this is your reminder that all these episodes are available via YouTube. So stay with me. I'm going to take you on a little tour, and we're going to have a little fun. Grab a glass. Cheers. Welcome to the clubhouse at Domaine Serene. We are in the Dundee Hills in the Willamette Valley, and this place is just spectacular. You can see the rolling hills, the vines, the trees all around, and of course, incredible views from the property that just seem to go for miles and miles. So this is where you're going to come if you find yourself out in wine country to go wine tasting. But today this place is being taken over by the Salud Oregon Pinot Noir wine auction, which brings together vintners from all over the region who are pouring these really special cuvées that are going to be up for auction, all to benefit a great cause. So as you can see, so many different faces here, incredible bottles, and just a really great way to unite the community in one of Oregon's most special places. I'll be sharing more about what this auction is a little bit later, but now let's get back to the show. Well, cheers, Claire.
Cheers.
Thank you for being here.
Oh my God, it's such a pleasure.
It is a pleasure to finally meet you. I feel like I've known your name and I've seen your face and I've known the wines for a long time now, and yet we've never actually sat down for a glass.
It's
so
awesome.
This is nice.
Yes, it's great. On this beautiful fall day. I was actually outside. Well, I was just saying to the woman who brought me in, I got to work outside this morning, and then I get to do this with you this afternoon, and then the event tonight. It's like a perfect day.
What could be better?
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Claire Carver of Big Table Farm, happy to have you.
Thank you.
Let's set the scene a little bit.
Yes.
For those who have this wine that are part of the Wine Access Unfiltered podcast wine club, hopefully you can taste some gorgeous notes of strawberries that we're going to talk about in a second. But I want to set the scene about the farm, because that is sort of the anchor that is all things this wine.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that I got to be outside this morning. So what I was doing this morning was I was preparing our barn for moving the cows off the pasture into the barn for winter.
Okay.
So
what kind of cows are they?
They're Red Devon Irish Dexter crosses.
Okay.
My husband and I moved to the farm in 2006. We were living in Napa. He was working in wine there for 10 years. And he was working as a cellar rat. But he worked for some really great winemakers. Okay. We had this dream of having our own brand, and we were doing backyard Victory Garden and, you know, everything in Napa, but really on a postage stamp.
Yeah.
So we sold that house in 2006 in the spring, so that was the height of the real estate market. A lot of sweat equity in that house on top of that, so timing was great.
Yeah.
And we were able to buy 70 acres in Oregon with a dilapidated farmhouse and really a lot of garbage and destruction on that land.
Yeah.
And over the last now coming 19 years, we've made it into a fully regenerative farm.
Incredible.
We have rotational grazing cattle. So my herd ranges between 17 and 20 some cows. It's a cow-calf breeding herd, which I can talk about if you want. 2 draft horses, 5 beehives, 7 goats, somewhere between 17 and 25 sheep, depending on the breeding, where we are with life and death.
Harvest season, if you will.
Yes. 2 pigs, 2 farm cats, a dog, chickens for eggs, as well as meat chickens that are pasture-based as well. So again, rotational grazing with them. And the sheep are also full-time in pasture in our vineyard.
And was this like trial by error? Like, did you know what you were doing?
No.
Okay.
In fact, literally just this morning, we were working on the barn, and my sweet husband came out to the barn, and he was like, "Can I help you? Because my shoulder's just bothering me." And he's like, "I'll help you spread this straw." And his nephew was there because he worked harvest with us, and we were basically reminiscing because I found some old photos from 2009. And we were like, yeah, sometimes this feels like we're beating our heads against the wall, but oh, trust me, we did a lot of dumb stuff back in the day. So we have our more of our systems around the animals much better organized, which is good because I'm, you know, not as young as I was 19 years ago. And while I'm still very strong and able to do all the farm work, we did a lot of crazy things that really taxed us more physically before we had things sort of dialed in as we do now. We're still learning.
Yeah.
Of course.
I assume that should be the case with any farming endeavor, right?
Yeah.
Mother Nature always gives you something a little unique every year.
It's true. It's true.
When did the wine come in to play?
So we planted the vineyard really late in the process. So we planted the first vines 21 and 22.
Okay.
So that's just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And they're not making grapes yet because we're doing regenerative farming, so no-till. We were only irrigating with rainwater and no herbicide. And of course no pesticide, but you really don't need pesticide in vineyard, but mostly herbicide for controlling weeds. So we did not use any of those tools. And so it's going a little more slowly, but we'll get there. And probably a few more years and we'll see some grapes.
Yeah.
But hopefully, you know, we didn't come into this business from a different business. We bootstrapped it all the way. I mean, $4,000 to start our brand 19 years ago.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So when you build a business that way, we had to wait to plant vineyard because that's really capital intensive, and you have to, if you're going to do it right, you have to be really patient as well. There's not a lot of return on your money. So actually, it actually brings me around to this wine a little bit. So we made our very first wine in 2006. We made Syrah, which was, it was really dumb from a business perspective because Syrah is in barrel for 2 years, so you can't sell it. Right?
And then when it is out of barrel, also a challenge to sell.
Yeah, and it's Syrah. And we moved to Oregon to make Pinot Noir. And my husband just randomly bought this Syrah from Maggie, and
From Maggie Harrison?
Yeah.
Well,
which was lovely.
I'm sure it was delicious.
It was delicious. It was a great fruit source. I mean, we made the wine. We bought the fruit from her. Anyway, so it was great wine. And we do still make Syrah. We make 150 cases. But as our first wine, from a sales perspective, it was a little challenging.
Yeah.
But then 2007 came along. So that was 2006. We made 150 cases of Syrah. And that was all of our money. Like, we're screwed, right?
Yeah.
So then 7 rolls along, and we were able to buy just a little tiny bit of Pinot fruit. And 7 was a really cool vintage. And coming from 10 years of winemaking in Napa, Brian was not used to these really low bricks on the wine. And he said to me, he's like, Claire, I I don't think I can make really great Pinot Noir out of this vintage. In hindsight, some beautiful Pinot Noirs were made in 7, but
Coming from Napa, you might be a little...
He didn't know, we were new.
For sure.
We've learned a lot since then, of course. But he's like, I don't know what to do with this fruit. And he said, I'm going to make it into rosé. I was like, okay.
I'm sorry, this is 2007.
2007.
So this is actually like kind of pre-rosé craze too.
Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Another brave move on your part.
A little bit,
Okay.
yeah. But he looked at that fruit and he felt like this was the best wine he could make given that circumstance, optimizing the vintage, which is the beauty of winemaking. He was a brewer before he was a winemaker, and he transitioned into wine because beer, you take varying inputs and you're expected to always make the same product. With wine, you have varying inputs, and the consumers and our customers' expectation is that we're optimizing each vintage, that it is going to be different, especially with small production wines. Anyway, fruit comes in, I'm going to make rosé. I was like, I trust you, you're my husband, whatever. But that's where this style was born, because most rosé, you're pulling a Signet off of your red wine production to concentrate your red wine, and then that Signet is what you make into the rosé.
Right.
It's really a byproduct.
Right.
So with this wine, all of the Pinot fruit got pressed right into the primary ferment on this wine. We started tasting it to get the right level of extraction, tannin, and color, pressed it into barrel, full malolactic, and then bottled, unfined, and unfiltered. Nothing has changed with our rosé production since that first vintage, except for, one thing. Back then, we were in a custom crush facility and we had access to a destemmer. So in the early days, we destemmed. And now we don't own a destemmer, and everything we make is 100% whole cluster. We started inching towards whole cluster, towards 100% over the years. We started with just a little bit and then experimented, and we just liked it. And Brian deepened into understanding of how to deal with whole cluster to not get green short tannins. And then by the time we built our winery, which was 2014, 2015, 2014 was the first vintage in the new winery, we literally had no more money. So we were like, well, we're all in. We were already at like 80% whole cluster, so we just jumped off. So that's the major change with this one, is it is 100% whole cluster.
We actually did a whole episode on whole cluster that I will definitely link to in the description with, I believe it was with Louisa Ponzi. So we can refer back to that if anyone has questions about whole cluster. What I actually do want to talk about is more on the rosé, because for those of you who are drinking this, it's November, and some of you may have thought I was out of my mind for including a rosé in a November shipment. But I keep talking about on this podcast that rosé is not a seasonal wine. Sure, some of them are preferable perhaps in the summer months, but then you have examples like this one that really kind of speak to more than a season. It speaks to terroir, it speaks to grape, it speaks to winemaking, and it has this texture and this intensity to it that feels a little bit like it's a red wine masquerading as a white, or a white masquerading as a red, and it doesn't really know where it fits in the world, but we love it because it's so quaffable and drinkable, and you cannot help but smile when you drink this wine.
Thank you. The texture on this wine, I mean, it's ferment. I call this an early pressed Pinot Noir. I mean, it says rosé on the back, but really it's an early pressed Pinot Noir.
And it's 100% Pinot Noir.
It's 100% Pinot Noir, 100% whole cluster. We just toss it all in. We start primary ferment, and then basically, if we just let it go, it would just go straight into Pinot Noir. But we just press it early. And then we take that same juice, put it right back into the vessel that we started primary ferment in, and then let it go completely dry without the skins. That's why you get this wonderful, like, thick, juicy strawberry character, but you do get a little bit of tannin. And that's what makes this a great food wine. So this wine is so good with Thanksgiving dinner.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is, it is, because there's all these like sweet things, and actually it's also really good with spicy things.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. But because it's bone dry, it pairs really well with food, but it has tons of fruit character that will balance really well throughout that meal.
Absolutely. I think this is a wine because it has tannin and it has texture, but it has the brightness and lift that you expect from a white wine that we want during a big meal like Thanksgiving.
Yes.
It has all of those things to kind of ebb and flow throughout the different dishes. And you're right, there is a lot of sweetness on the table at Thanksgiving. So I do think that a rosé is a wonderful, especially one like this, addition to your Thanksgiving table. It's also like a lower alcohol wine too, which, let's be honest, at Thanksgiving, we all need to mitigate our alcohol consumption.
Be careful a little bit. Yeah, I don't know if you're like me, but at some point you lose. If you have too much alcohol, then you also start eating more than you probably should. And Thanksgiving, that's already dangerous.
Right. We don't need to be dropping grenades everywhere, you know, with all of our drinking. No, it's great. I am super excited that we were able to include this because one, I keep preaching the flexibility of rosé, and yet I've not included it in a shipment outside of the summer months. And so this was just perfect timing to like put my money where my mouth is and be like, this is what we're doing.
Well, thank you. I will say this is a tiny production wine. So I'm honored to have it in your club, and this is a handcrafted wine. This is a wine that is really allocated into our national marketplace, so it's not really widely available. We only make between 300 and 400 cases of this wine total.
I want to direct to the label too because you're an artist.
I am,
and this laughing pig
thank you
is courtesy of your fingers.
Yes. So this one actually doesn't change every year. All the other labels, I do a new drawing. I don't know if do you follow me on Instagram?
I do.
I just posted all the drawings that I
haven't
did
seen it yet.
for the 23 vintage. I do like little time-lapse drawings. Anyway, I love doing new drawings each year for each wine because they're sort of extensions of what's happening on our farm, our relationship with our growers, what's happening in each of those vineyards, because our barrel select wines are single vineyard wines. They have like little themes, like the Cattrall Brothers. It's the oldest certified organic vineyard in Oregon, and they always deliver their fruit in this like old vintage truck. And so every year I do a new drawing of that truck, and like some years my dog is sitting in the back, and some years like the guy is driving.
I don't think I've ever, like all the years that I've known your wines, I don't think I've ever noticed that they're different labels, but you're right. Like now that I'm thinking about it, you're right.
Yeah, they're on a theme, so like they're all pigs, but they're different pigs. On the Willamette Valley. Now this one is just one drawing, and it's the same every year.
And she's very cute. Why would you change it?
Yeah, she's pretty cute.
When you are as immersed in the wine world as I am and you are, like you just can't help but to let all of these other things infiltrate it, right? Like whether it's animals or growing vegetables or paint, like there's just something, if you truly love wine, I do believe that like there is just something that you're drawn to in these other facets. And I love that Big Table Farm has kind of allowed those worlds to collide. It's weirdly unusual to have it all exist in one place.
In one place, I'm lucky that I'm married to the man I am because we are both just insatiably curious. Oh, let's try fermenting that, or let's try growing that, and we've cured prosciuttos and pancetta. And I mean, if there's something to learn about preserving, curing, preparing, growing, butchering food, like we're just all over it.
I love that.
There's a cookbook coming.
Ooh, really?
Yeah,
how exciting. Very exciting.
Lots of recipes.
Okay, well I'll be on the lookout for that for sure. I feel like we need more people in our world like you. It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much. I hope everyone is loving this wine as much as I do. I cannot stop smiling when I taste this wine, and hopefully if you're drinking this wine and listening to this, the energy and enthusiasm that you feel from you, I hope that infiltrates you in some way as well. Because I do feel like wines like this, you look at the label, you drink the wine, you feel the energy. It all sounds a little woo-woo, but I promise you, there's something so like high touch and wonderful and personable that that you feel in these wines that I just want more of in the world. And I thank you so much for being a part of that.
Oh, well, thank you for helping to tell our story.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right, you guys, you have been watching some incredible interviews from some of the vintners that are here at the Salud Oregon Wine Pinot Noir auction. Did I get that right?
Salud, the Oregon Pinot Noir auction.
Thank you. Well, of course, you would know because you are the head person around here. Very, very busy, so thank you for taking a quick break, Stephanie, of the Oregon Pinot Noir Wine Auction. How are you feeling?
For having me.
Are you so busy right now?
You know, it's the best time of year. People from around the country are here. The wine country is like coming together after harvest. Soon there's going to be like 300 people in one space, and the energy is just really real.
Yeah.
People coming together after harvest, like celebrating community, celebrating Oregon Pinot Noir. It's just, there's a buzz in the air, and it's really fun.
You can feel it. Give us an overview of what is happening this weekend.
So Salud is a 2-day event. Today we're really featured on the Salud Cuvée wines. So these are Pinot Noirs that's crafted from the very best barrels. Vintners pick out what is the best of the best for the year, and they reserve that just for Salud, just for giving back to their vineyard stewards and their families. And so today we're tasting those wines, we're selling those wines by the case, and then tomorrow everybody gets all dolled up, trades their Carhartts for their tuxes, and we have the gala, and that's everything from trips to Burgundy, trips to Japan, Napa trips, French collections, to local getaways and intimate winemaker dinners. And again, just a really, really unique celebration of winemakers sitting at tables with you, so much wine being shared, and just a really, really magical night too.
So fun, and all for a great cause, which supports the people of this region. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So Salud's mission is accessible, affordable healthcare for vineyard stewards and their families. Year-round, we travel about 6,000 miles a year. We bring healthcare right into the vineyards. We have bilingual, bicultural providers. Everything we do is, how can we make healthcare less complicated? How can we knock down barriers in the way? So, do you have insurance? Do you not? Do you have a primary care provider? Do you not? Do you have medical debt that you're carrying around with you? Do you need a medical interpreter for your next appointment? Do you have affordable prescriptions? Like, all of the things in the system that kind of can get you tripped up and that you're not prioritizing taking care of yourself, we want to make it easy for people to bump that back up on the list.
Right.
And have access and have the healthcare that they need.
Yeah, because I mean, people are working incredibly hard. I think a lot of us forget that the wines on our dinner table would not be possible without the people who farm them, the people that make them, the people who support this entire ecosystem. So I love the mission that you guys are doing. It's incredibly important, and taking that to some degree off of their plate is huge.
Salud goes so much further than wine.
Yeah.
It starts with wine. Wine brings us together.
Yeah.
But we support people who work in food crops and blueberries and Christmas trees and nurseries. So it's touching, whether you know it or not, it's the people who are working in so many other industries of our life that are doing these crucial jobs and also happen to craft these incredible wines that we enjoy and love. So it's the power of wine to do so much more.
That's right.
Yeah.
You crack a bottle, you help a whole community.
Yeah. Amen.
Well, thank you for helping this community and others as well, because it all trickles down. I know you're super busy. What are you most looking forward to this weekend?
I mean, raising so much money.
Yes.
Yeah.
How can people support?
You can make a donation at saludauction.org. You can come join us in 2025. Bidding is open online every year to folks, so even if you can't come to Oregon, though you absolutely should, you can bid online as well.
And the weather is spectacular right now.
I mean, fall foliage, they talk about it on the East Coast, but I think we have really, really good fall foliage in Oregon.
You are giving the East Coast a run for its money. It is unbelievable here right now.
That's true.
So, thank you so much.
Thank
I will
you.
let you get back to the very important work that you're doing out there, and I hope you have a great and very successful weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you.
Do not let the lack of wine that you're seeing in this setup reflect my feelings on this producer whatsoever, because Lingua Franca actually happens to be one of my favorites.
Thank you. That's nice. Which one is your favorite?
I'm a big fan of the Chardonnay, although I have quite a bit of the Pinot. Actually, if you look at my wine fridge right now, Lingua Franca is in front on 2 of the shelves.
That's nice. That means a lot.
Yeah, I know. I have a lot of wine, so I feel like where I place those front row slots is like a big deal.
Yeah, totally.
Thomas Savre.
That's me.
How are you doing? You're in Oregon, which is your home now for how long?
I arrived in Oregon in 2013. Started working in the Willamette Valley with some great folks like at Evening Land, Rush Bar, Session More Wine and stuff. And And then I met Larry Stone.
That's right, at IPNC in 2014.
You know it, yeah. And,
I did my research.
Yeah, met him there and kind of changed my life at this point. He just came from Burgundy and he said, are you the person that worked at Romanée Conti? And I said, I was an intern there. And he's like, I just came back and they talked about you. And I was like, oh, that's kind. And from there, started a discussion. And really, I think the things that changed for me when Larry purchased a piece of land that he really loved and wanted to buy for a long time by selling a piece of his collection. And
I'd heard that.
Yeah, from the Rubicon days, right? So it was, and then I was pruning the vineyard with a team in the winter, and then I saw this vineyard across the street from Seven Springs in Willamette Hills, and I'm like, what is gonna do with this?
Yeah.
What's gonna happen? Someone's gonna make wine.
I have questions.
Someone's gonna make wine, and then probably the night I sent an email to Raj Parr, who was his, who knows, like Larry's protégé, good friend from ever, and then Raj gave me his contact, and I think contacted Larry, had dinner, and I started Lingua Franca with Larry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what happened.
And now we're in 2024, so this has been 10 years,
so
basically.
we're celebrating year 10 this year with a series of amazing and crazy events going to happen. Because, Larry's friend was Emeril and Daniel Boulou, and we're trying to, make some really cool things happen. 10 years, it's a big deal. I just realized I was harvesting from me. I was like, wow. Everybody joke about my gray hair, and I'm like, yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
10 years.
They used to call you the young guy.
Yeah. I still want to be young.
I think we're all young at heart, right? If you make wine and you drink wine,
absolutely,
you're definitely young. But you didn't start off in wine, though, right? Like your family was in the medical side of things.
Exactly.
And so, what made you choose this path?
My dad is from Burgundy, and so I was going to see my grandparents twice a month, something like this, so we're driving from the east side of France to basically Burgundy, and then I was driving through the RN74 all the time, and so you just pass those vineyards all the time, and I don't know, I'm starting to remember, it's not like I remember have some vivid memory of literally sticking my nose on the glass of the car and then being mesmerized by the vineyard line because you just it's kind of, and so I was always fighting with my brother to which side of the car you have to be. But I remember there was some things I was always impressed about what was those straight line coming for literally probably 30 kilometers.
Yeah.
And that was when I was a kid, and then it's in France you have this really family lunch, and Sunday my grandma cooks and we open a lot of wine. My grandpa was like, I'm so excited to show you this, and the family share, and then you 6 years old and you have this, and then you have 10 and you have this without water, and then 13 you can drink one glass, and it's boom. And at one point I realized there was some things that I really actually appreciated for not just obviously the taste, but the culture, and there's so much thing around history, culture, everything. And so I started to actually, being a hobby, when I was 16, I took some tasting classes, and when I was this nerd. It was I was had a membership for La Revue des Vins de France, which is the equivalent of Wine Spectator in France.
Some kids have comic books. You had that?
Yeah. Had that, and then we're buying it every month, and doing some research and stuff, and making my little cellar with my dad. It was cool. But then I decided to go to med school. Didn't work for me, and so I was come a couple of circumstances. I was I need to do something different, and so my parents are amazing. I grew up amazing family. They're very important for them to have high education. So they were like, we really want you to study some things that was gonna make sense for you. And so my uncle lives in New York. I left France for almost 8 months. Went to live with him. He loves wine, and then at this point I was trying to what I'm gonna do, and then came back. I was in wine school, basically.
This feels so obvious. I was collecting wine as a kid. I might as well do it now.
Yeah, and then, it's just like this. And it's funny because I lived in New York and I was 20, so I couldn't drink. And I would legally, thank you. And but my uncle had like a good cellar, or has a good cellar, so we were like talking wine all the time and trying to figure out what I was doing with my life. And I was like, at the med school situation, I was able to basically switch to, I had like, university credits, so I was able to like jump and get to like a quicker pass on science. So went to Dijon, and then I was like, okay, I'm out, I'm in Dijon, and this is where you study wine. And then I started to study, and 2 master's degree later, I'm here.
Okay, so you spend your entire life watching Burgundy vineyards out the window. You spend time in Dijon.
Yep.
Your father is from Burgundy.
Yep.
But you're here in Oregon.
Yes.
Why?
The main reason, my wife is American. I met her through we met at Gallo. I did my research at Gallo.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a great place to do research.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was such I worked under Nick Ducouslier and studied like, amazing, really technical viticulture research. And then she was in food science. So we met there. Amy's from Arkansas. And we met in Oregon. We're like, okay, Oregon is going to be the place where we want to be. That's the reason why. The reason why I actually wanted to come to the U.S., I think, the taste of New York and the taste of the U.S. was appealing to me. I really love how I was welcome in the U.S. back, in 2006. It was great. And but also there's a couple of things that kind of draw more like significant line. One was, when I worked at Romanée Conti, I was I was an intern there, and I established really good relationship with the De Villen family, and then Aubert de Villen, who take really good care of his employees and took me for lunch, because he always take his intern for lunch at the end, and it's a big deal because you see him very often, but it's really for him important to like kind of having a last feedback of your experience there. He's like, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to make Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And he's like, okay. And he's a very calm. Have you met him before? He's very calm, but also like has a presence in a room that is
commanding.
Yes, but very polite and he's
not
like,
overbearing, but very, very present.
And he's like, And he's like, well, you're not going to do it in Burgundy. And I said, why? He's like, well, you don't have a family that own vineyards in Burgundy, so you should go to explore the world and make wine in other places. And I can tell you, I know that California and other region is great, and I will help you to get there. And so it was amazing because, you're like, okay, you have such an important person in the wine world, and you're like kids, and you're like, all right.
And he's just like basically told you like the Wizard of Oz, like this is your path.
This is what I'm doing. So, and I think that was obviously a key. And then another very important piece, was one wine. I mean, honestly, like a wine at DRC, like they're very generous and they have a cellar, and 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning, we're pressing wine, and it's like asked me to like bring 2 bottles. One of them was, I found Christum 95 in one of the cubes in the cellar, and
at DRC.
So DRC
had a bottle of 95 Christum.
And they had like 95 Christum, they had Penarache, they had another, because I'm sure like Steve and Lynn and other folks went to like visit, and then they just probably gifted to.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so, but I was like, I'm gonna take it. 95, it was in 2012.
Okay.
I blind it, and I taste with everybody, and everybody was like, wow, this is really good. Whole cluster, tasty, fresh. It's a Côte de Nuit producer from, I was like, all right, Oregon Pinot, boom. And then people were like kind of disappointed. I'm like, guys, this is so good. Come on, can you say?
This is the Judgment of Paris all over again.
It's kind of French, like a bit like I'm French, I know.
Yeah, there's a little bravado there, yeah.
Oh, come on, why? And then, but this bottle really changed for me because I think I was like, it's extraordinary. The qualities that can be made in a bottle, but also you can age so long, So I was like, this region is really serious to a place where, I want to explore. So, and when I came here, I was very serious. I literally, like, I had a tiny bit of saving, and I said, if this is the place I want to make wine, I need to come in person as an intern, not like sending a resume. So I sent emails to Grant Coulter when he was at Beaufrère, walked the vineyard with him. I met like literally like 10 or 12 people for a period of 1 week to interview, to just get an internship. And basically, like, I wanted to show I'm serious. And when I met Isabelle, I was like, yeah, okay, there's Chardonnay. And I was not very, like, I didn't know much about Chardonnay. Also, when I worked at, were very heavily Pinot producer.
And you've talked about the fact that you think Chardonnay is harder to make than Pinot.
Yes, it is. It is fragile. It's a grape that's, I mean, if you think about it, in a sense of every single detail in Chardonnay, if you change something in Chardonnay, it's quick to change a lot for the long run, where Pinot, you have a bit of a more like time to change things. For Chardonnay, also, it's, you really press something and you kind of lose all the protective thing, all the tannin, all of the antioxidant things, and they're gone. Like, you press, it's a juice, and so you have to treat it very. And then today was, you know, it's not really a pressure, but we really want to make wine that's have longevity in a sense, and they can be aged properly, and it can be enjoyed today and 5, 6, 10, 15 years. Oxidation is an issue for us as winemakers, so we need to be very like careful on like how to manage oxygen level, and for that it's precision.
And no room for error.
Very little, very little. And if you do, it's like you really can sense it. So you have to be, I think maybe it's a mentality that you need to put yourself. It's not necessarily like you're no room for error. It's like, you know, I think there is beauty in imperfection in winemaking, but I think that, and that's how you learn. But I think that the mentality of saying this is harder sometimes makes us like taking different steps.
People talk about Lingua Franca as the sort of answer to Burgundy in Oregon, and they make the comparison between Oregon and Burgundy. What do you say to that? Because I taste those wines, and there is a Burgundian sensibility to them, but they're, to me, uniquely Oregon. But I wonder how you feel about that.
So I think, personally, I want to make Oregon wine. I think Larry and I think the team, we want to make Oregon wine.
What is Oregon wine now? How would you characterize, in maybe non-wine terms, the Pinot that you're making here in Oregon versus maybe something that you were making in Burgundy?
There is technicality here that is very clear, and I think it's clear to the US. I mean, the US wine industry, I think I really, really appreciate how, like, the precision of everybody, Napa, like, every past Washington, it's amazing how people have invested into making sure like they are doing the best things. So technically, it is something, and also there's a playful, because you know we found ourselves serious, but like you know we are making wine, you know in order to play. We have so many different customer here. We have like customer from all over the place. We're driving from, and we're close to them in a sense, right? We have the entire US too.
Right. And you're not bound by the AOP system either.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's been kind of awesome. I'm very grateful to be in the US and make wine, because on that, when I sometimes talk to friends, and it's like they're very kind of in a box of this AOC system sometimes. And I think if you utilize experience and seriousness and you know passion, love, whatever, and doing something wonderful, it's a really amazing place, because you are like you have a focus, you have a line, a direction, but you can do things that cannot.
Right. You can color outside the lines.
And this is kind of a bit of a freedom thing and it's great to have, and it's a privilege. And I think for the next probably 30 years, American mentality is usually, most of the time, really good to change things. And so, you know, where in Burgundy, I think sometimes tradition is anchors them a little, you know.
I think tradition's a beautiful thing, but I also think there is...
They can be stuck sometimes in tradition.
Right. Same question, but applied to how you're drinking them. So how would you characterize Burgundy versus Oregon Pinot to taste?
There's a bit more sun here.
Okay.
In Oregon, there is always something a bit ripeness. There is a blue fruit characteristic, and there is an acidity that it's very hard to just, like the acidity between Burgundy and Oregon is very different.
In a technical sense, or how you perceive it?
We perceive sensory-wise. I think, like, like acid in Burgundy are always a bit more pronounced. Like naturally here, it's always like it's very good in here, but it's like more, I don't know, more subtle. And you have wines that has a lot of different layers. We play with, and I think about what I just said. Sun plus a subtle acidity, probably like it's a slightly higher level of ripeness that is natural, yet we make very balanced wine. We can, it's just there is very little artifacts and addition in Oregon. You don't have to, you get the grapes, you can bring them to best maturity and then that's it.
Right.
You just have to play with the fact that Pinot, it's a very fragile grapes and difficult, and you have to be very gentle.
I know you have a big weekend coming up, and congratulations on a great harvest in 2024.
Thank you. That was a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. You feel good about it?
Very good. I mean, I think it's, I was talking
You're
about
smiling.
Yeah.
Not every winemaker smiles after harvest.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's a good one because sometimes I think you need a harvest that is a good one for everybody, and this is one of them. It's like we should have smile on the face all weekend and all year. Like it was just, sometimes it needs to go that way.
Yeah.
Just easy. We all need to work together to bring this region to where it should be. It's such a unique place here. So yeah, I'm very hopeful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got some Bunker Hill in my in my fridge.
Nice.
When it's 2021.
Yeah, good vintage.
When am I opening that?
We're starting to open, I think we see good primes on those Chardonnay, in the 5 years, within the 5 years. But then after, what I love about Chardonnay is, they evolve very nicely too. So, yeah, you have a couple of years.
A little time.
Yeah.
All right, let them chill.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
as well.
This has been a pleasure. I won't cheers you with water because it's bad luck, but
it's bad luck.
You want a fist bump? Does that make sense?
Let's do that.
Let's do
Cheers.
that. Cheers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you guys having fun yet? Did you love that interview? I did too. It was so much fun. I just wanted to take a brief moment and remind you that if you are not a member of the Wine Access Unfiltered Podcast Wine Club, stop what you're doing, pause the show, scroll down a little bit, and check the description for all the links to become a member. It's 4 wines that you're getting delivered to your home about every other month. It's $120 plus tax, but it includes shipping, and you're gonna get 10% off of all of your Wine Access purchases. I select them. Wines like this at Big Table Farm are included, and we have so much fun selecting these wines, which pair with every single episode. We also do separate tasting videos for each of these wines, so if you really want to deep dive, you can come and join me for those tasting videos alone. We have so much fun selecting these wines for you guys, and we love that you're enjoying them. So if you are a member already, please let us know what you're loving, and if you're not, well, this is your cue. All right, back to the show. So nice to finally meet you.
Absolutely.
I mentioned I've heard your name a million times and so much about you. I visited Abbott Claim, I think it was 3 years ago, and I walked away with it not only being my favorite experience, but also some of my favorite wines in Oregon. You guys started this project relatively recently, though.
That's correct. I mean, the vineyard was planted back in 2001, so the name Abbott Claim was already established as that of a vineyard that was planted by Ken Wright back in 2001. It's after Anthony Beck, who owns the winery, and by then had bought the vineyard from Ken Wright, hired me back in 2017, that we really created the brand. And we did that alongside the construction of the winery, and so it all came together around 2018, 2019. First vintage out under the label Abbott Claim, winery opening in 2020, and then starting to receive guests.
Yeah.
So when you came 3 years ago, would have been within the first probably 12 months of us being open, just on the back of COVID and reopening.
Well, you guys had it together very quickly, which is very impressive.
Well, it's not a very big space, and we had a small team. We still have a small team, and we have kind of specific ideas. So we just went about implementing them right away.
I was very impressed with not only the experience, but as I said, the wine. And I bought a few bottles, and I came home and had like Christmas dinner maybe a year after that. And I was like, I'm going to open one of these. And I opened Chardonnay and I opened it for my family. And we all were just like stopped in our tracks because it was exquisite. It was like nothing we had ever tasted. And I've been so impressed, following you guys over the years since then. But you are not from Oregon.
That's correct.
Where are you from?
So I'm French. I was born outside of Paris. Mostly grew up in the Rhone Valley when I was a kid, and then did all my wine studies in Burgundy.
Yeah.
And then came to Oregon some 11 years ago to work with the Druins, so through that Burgundy connection.
And you knew Thomas, our other guest.
Yep. Yeah. So Thomas, and actually Thomas is probably one of three people who's responsible for me being in Oregon, because I knew Thomas from us studying together in Burgundy. He was kind of wrapping up his studies when I got at the University of Dijon, but kind of met him quickly, befriended. And he came back from California once, from an internship at Gallo, I think. And I was asking about going to the US. I had just met an American girl who's now my wife, and he told me, no, forget about California, go to Oregon. And so that's how he put it on my radar.
And how have you liked Oregon since, very different than France, obviously.
Yeah. It took me a minute, but I think it's bigger than just the fact that it's Oregon. It's maybe just kind of a more general change of culture. I love being here. I've made incredible kind of lifelong friends.
Yeah.
Just the dynamism of the industry, the kindness of people, the friends I've made, but not even just the lifelong friendships. I was just chatting with Claire Carver just now, and just people in the industry is just absolutely incredible, just feeling like home all the time. And you live in the Willamette Valley or in Portland, and you're always seeing people you know. There's a real sense of, I know it's been said so many times about Oregon, but there's that sense of community that's quite unmistakable. And some of it has to do with the fact that it's the wine industry.
Yeah.
You could be part of any wine industry in any region, and that would be somewhat happening. But there's a thing here that just makes you comfortable kind of right away. And so it worked out for me quite well. And I have incredible friends, a wife, 2 kids, been living here for 11 years. So it's been going.
You're not going back anytime soon?
Well, no, apparently not. So I've never really made plans of any kind. I never thought I would stay here and when I showed up in Oregon, it was just to do harvest with the Druin family.
Right.
I had another harvest set up right after 2013 harvest with the Druins. I was supposed to go to Australia. But then a winery that's very, very incredibly close to here, actually, up on Bremen Orchards, right next to Domaine Serene, ended up hiring me for over a couple of years to be the assistant winemaker there. And then, I never went to Australia.
Yeah. You've worked in Burgundy, and you've obviously worked here. What's different?
Yeah, just about everything is different.
Yeah.
Actually. No.
So why do people make the comparison between the two?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't. It's always a long conversation whenever I get asked about to draw parallels or compare Burgundy and Oregon. It kind of takes forever. From a fundamental level, whether it's culture, traditions, terroir, geology, climate, even plant material, and then the whole human approach to farming and winemaking, all of that is different. It all is different.
So do you feel like you had to sort of start from the ground up when you came here and started working with the vineyards here?
Yes and no. Luckily, I was always able to work with people who ended up kind of appreciating the experience I had to bring. Mm-hmm. So it's not like I had to fit into a different mold. I was very lucky that in all my past experiences in Oregon and currently at Abbott, I kind of got to kind of work the way I want to be working, or in ways I'm very comfortable working, at least, a few years back. But, you talked about the vineyard specifically. Just the culture around farming and around what the goals are in terms of growing grapes and what the goals can be in terms of making wine. I've never had to make those compromises, but when you're dealing with the farming system in Oregon, and even with the terroir, with the dirt, with understanding the plant material, which is quite different than what you see in Burgundy nowadays. There was definitely a few things to discover, but it's the exciting part. I get to develop new vineyards and dig in the dirt and select new plant material, and so there's a lot of things that I can do here that I would have never been able to do back in France. It's just it's the opportunities, and also just drawing on call it the experience and the philosophy that I came with, and those two together is really what makes it really engaging for me.
Yeah. And I promise I'm not blowing up your head, but one of the things that I always hear when people talk about you is you are sort of a winemaking genius. You think outside the box, you do things a little bit differently. You are able to find paths in winemaking that a lot of people cannot. Would you agree with that?
I mean, no, it would be hard to. It would be very hard to agree with. But what I always say is that the knowledge is available to anyone. I studied. I mean, there was some 25 or 30 kids in my class. And there's 25 or 30 kids that graduate from the University of Dijon every year. And there's 5 schools in France that give that degree, and there's Davis in the US and Cornell. And I mean, it's the expertise, the science, the knowledge is everyone has access to it. I mean, we have the internet.
But you're doing something differently.
Well, it's more about, I think it's just more about, I used to work with someone who really became my mentor. I've worked 7 years with a kind of consultant out of Burgundy called Pierre Millman. And despite being an incredibly depth of knowledge, having an infinite kind of body of knowledge just kind of in his brain, just the able of conjuring that knowledge and gluing it all together into a cohesive vision, being able to not just use knowledge, but also use a philosophy and a sensitivity is really what makes the difference. So yeah, the knowledge is available to anyone. It just really depends what you make of it.
What do you think the philosophy is for you at Abbott Claim?
I mean, if you just really had to boil it down, it's about finding what makes our work even worth being done, even worth existing, and then just trying to highlight that.
The wines taste different. I mean, in a good way. I think they have a signature to them that I don't see a lot of places. There is a distinctiveness, especially to the Chardonnay. Where do you see the vineyard starting and you playing a role in that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a constant balancing act. I do want to make wines that have a certain objective quality because I want people to be able to enjoy them. I do want the wines to somewhat speak for themselves, and qualitatively, I also want the wines to. There's some very objective kind of measurements of quality, complexity, precision, balance, length, ageability, like the deliciousness, like all those things, right? The wines have to have that. So call it objective quality, but never at the expense of expressing the character of what allowed that fruit to even exist in the first place. So call it, terroir, time and place, whatever. Yeah, how do you allow those things to exist without you having interfered with them so much that they're unrecognizable? That would be recipe, that would be style, that would be ego, that would be many things that people can do in winemaking.
Is it a feel? Is it a taste? Is it where in the process are you like, I need to stop doing something now, or I need to start doing something?
Yeah. Sometimes when people kind of draw the comparison between the wines we make and some things that you can find in Burgundy, and my answer to that is, well, look, hopefully these wines don't taste like anywhere else but the vineyard. So in the case of the Pinot,
I think that's true, yeah.
Abbott Claim vineyard. Yeah. So trying to make the most precise, honest representation of that vineyard. And that is really what you learn in Burgundy, is a philosophy. It's not a style of winemaking. It is, what is your place in the whole grape growing and winemaking equation?
Right.
What is your role? Your role, I think our role is that of a vector, just like the grapes are a vector for the information of place to eventually finish in wine. And our role is quite akin to those of the varietal. It's just to take information and take it all the way through. So recognizing that is important, recognizing our role, being humble enough. And then finally, more practically, I see my role as a winemaker as just kind of setting reasonable boundaries. One boundary that I really wouldn't really want the wine to cross is that of spoilage. So I don't know, the wine being spoiled and tasting like spoilage. I
mean, nobody wants spoiled wine.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think.
Exactly, no one does. Unfortunately, the easy answer is to break the other barrier, the other boundary that I also set, which is that I don't want the wines to taste like process, like
sterile,
technique.
Right.
Yeah, like technique. So we never use any selected yeast. We don't filter the wines ever. We age for quite a long time on very heavy solids. We handle the fruit very, very delicately all the way throughout. We don't hesitate to extract the white wines quite aggressively to really get as much extract and get as much from the fruit as we possibly can. So I just don't want the wines, if all the wines we make start from a vineyard to another start tasting similar, or if, they all kind of taste like a certain style, or like my favorite new oak, or like my 100% whole cluster desire of making Pinot Noir, or whatever the style I want the wines to be, I'm not interested. That's stylistic winemaking. And for me, it's as dogmatically faulty as wine that is spoiled, because often spoiled wines is either because maybe we're lazy, or maybe we're dogmatic, or maybe we don't know enough. There's a whole movement, natural wine and so on, so that can kind of break that boundary that I set. And then the other one of overly stylistic, overly made manufactured wine is also not of interest to me. So as long as the wines can live within those two limits, they can do whatever they want.
What do you like that's not wine?
Books. I'm mostly a book person.
What kind of books?
Just classic literature, old French stuff from 19th century.
Yeah, very casual.
Yeah, my first love was always, I never thought, when I was a kid, I just wanted to be in books, so.
What book do you think your wine is most like?
I don't know. That's too difficult to answer. That is the books I would like the ones to be like, but yeah.
What's that?
Well, just what we set out to do at Abbott, and what I'm always personally interested in doing is, and what Anthony, the owner of Abbott Claim, is also interested in doing, is just trying to make things that are both timeless and universal. So that can be understood now, that could have been understood as hopefully qualitative and somewhat beautiful a long time ago, and that will also be able to a long time from now.
Well, there is an interesting correlation there in which you craft something in a particular vintage and you hope that it stays, but you know that it's going to evolve. And literature is sort of the same way, right? It's crafted, but it evolves with the times, and the person who reads it is going to interpret it a different way.
Yeah.
And I think the same could be said about the drinker, right?
That's true. That's absolutely that's true. Now that's where the great pieces of art transcend. That's when the great pieces of art are really, really great. Is that they transcend that. I think is when they speak for themselves, and everyone just has to agree that it's that good. The problem with the wine is that wine evolves also and then ends up dying.
Sure.
So you could spend your lifetime writing a book, and it could be quite this incredible masterpiece after you've spent all this time, and then it's set in stone, it exists, it's printed. But wine, even if 2024 Abbott Claim vineyards that is in barrel now, maybe it's incredible vintage. Maybe that'll be some of the best wine we've ever put out in bottle, and we'll be incredibly proud of it, but there's no one in 100 years who will be able to, maybe 100 years, but it's, we're kind of pushing it a century. It's possible.
I look forward to seeing the wines in a few years.
Yeah, me too.
More so than others, I think.
Yeah, no, me too. I can't wait. So far, so good, but it's, small track record.
What's on the horizon for Abbott Claim?
We've been developing this new piece of property in the Willamette Hills, literally on the roof of the hills. It's up Bethel Heights Road, right across the entrance of Temperance Hill. Starts at 700 feet and goes up to 1,100 feet high. We've planted quite a complex selection of plant material, both Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. It's very steep, very rocky, very windy, goes quite high, as I was saying. And right now we're working with some very well-known local established vineyards to start building some proper Massal selections from their old vines. And so hopefully next fall we will be planting a few very interesting Massal selection from great plots in the Willamette Hills that will be able to propagate at Lily Springs. And so
that's exciting.
Yeah, that's a long-term game. Being able to, Massal selection, it's not something that almost no one does it because, there's a variety of reasons, but being able to develop selections that is the result of already kind of an adaptation to terroir for a few decades, and being able to continue that over another set of 5, 6, 7, 8 decades or whatever, and then eventually get to something that is like no other. The more you allow time to do its work on vines, the more you get something that is a perfect reflection of its place. And so if every 20, 30 years we're planting vineyards and we're going back to the nursery and buying the same old plant material that was selected back in the 80s on the other side, on another continent, we're just pushing the reset button all the time. Not interested for me. Not interesting. So.
Yeah. May our vines outlast our books, or vice versa.
Absolutely. That's what's beautiful with vines, is that they don't have the same time horizon than we do.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
We're here for the Salud event.
Yeah.
Do you have a connection, a tie, a reason that you're here?
Kind of the easy answer is why I'm here is why Abbott Claim should be here. It's simply that I've talked about the place and the vineyard being the most fundamental aspect of our work, and that only really works if there's a certain amount of work that ends up being executed, and it's the hardest work that there is to do in the whole process. So being able to support the people who are spending hours in the rain, pruning in the cold, harvesting in the heat every year. It is really the most fundamental thing we can do each year to make sure that we have, well, not just an industry that exists, but also just that there's a group of people in a community that's alive and always kind of pushing forward and happy to be here. Yeah, and personally, I mean, being from France and arriving in Oregon some 10 years ago, so I didn't realize that American agriculture, and especially West Coast viticulture, was so reliant on immigrants' workforce. So I had no idea. And even less realizing that there was a certain portion of that immigrant workforce that was that maybe didn't have a legal status in the U.S. So, and that really, I worked for over 2 years in the Dundee Hills neighbor at White Rose, and worked with 2 generations of Mexican immigrants, and yeah, the relationships that were forged there for me were quite incredible, and just got me to understand a lot of things about this whole system.
Yeah.
Both Mexican culture, American culture, farming, and how those two kind of meet on the West Coast and in vineyards. I find it incredibly interesting, and also something we should all be very, very kind of thankful for, and just always do better.
The human ecosystem is the most fragile, and it's the most important to our industry.
Absolutely.
So taking care of it is vital.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, cheers to you. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to sharing a glass with you at the winery at some point.
Thank you.
Thanks. I don't know about you guys, but I had so much fun recording that episode and hanging out with 4 fantastic Oregon vintners. I'm having a little snack now. It's delicious. And before I close out, I just wanted to remind you that if you are not a member of this wine club, you can find everything you need to do so in the description below. But also remind you that we really appreciate if you could subscribe to this podcast, leave us a little review if you're loving it, and if you're watching this on YouTube, hit that like button for us. If you are drinking this wine and you're not having a snack with it, you are missing out. So grab a snack, have a glass of wine. I wish you all the